Welcome back to Incremental, the continuous improvement podcast. This is our practice edition where we talk about lean improvements we made throughout the week and tie them back to lean principles. This is episode 145 and is our practice edition, which I may have already mentioned. I'm Uriel Eisen of Austere Manufacturing and Arda Cards.
And I'm Devin Bedoni of Like and Precision. And the quote for this week: "The stuff we teach works only in organizations that have people in them." From Breaking the Logjam.
Very quippy.
I'm not exactly sure what this means, but
the context was like, when we teach this, we always get the question, okay, well, this is all great for like manufacturing and these very specific examples, but would it work in my organization? To which they respond.
I like it.
Yeah. We have people in our organization. All the stuff in that article is... I'm excited to implement it. I will say I've gone through a bit of a kind of running out of steam a little bit. Just kind of oversubscribed at the end of this last year and into the new year.
Oversubscribed to life.
Yeah, just like so much going on and like, I don't know, just like can barely keep my head above the water kind of feeling. And then being like, okay, so now make improvements. I'm just like, no, I get it. Like, yes, I am bought into the premise, but I don't know. It's like, yeah, but I feel the excitement coming back a little as some of these projects are buttoning them up. Yeah,
absolutely. I had a similar thing with just like all the end of year stuff that I forget about. It's like, I mean, obviously like taxes and whatever, just like creating new whatever organizational files for all the stuff for this year, rolling things over, reaching out to customers. It just seems like there is actually a surprising number of things that you kind of do at the new year that I don't think about as being activities that need to be done.
Yeah.
And yeah, similarly, as I tick through some of those boxes, starting to be like, okay, now we can get back to work. And do things well.
Yeah, so implementing pull is very top of mind for me in sales and also in new initiatives, both for Arda and for Austere, I think. And most of that has to do with like, I don't know, it's really easy to come up with ideas, but having a landing place for those ideas that is not, okay, we're sort of maybe working on them. That is instead like, that's a great idea. Let's evaluate it for... maybe some standardized criteria that belong to this kind of step in our process. I think could lend a level of, I don't know, relaxation. Kyle was sort of observing that when we work with companies, we're sort of like, hey, are you running around with your hair on fire? And meanwhile, we're running around with our hair on fire. And it's like, okay, maybe we should like...
drink your own Kool-Aid.
Yeah, a little. Drink Toyota's Kool-Aid. Yeah.
Does Austere have interesting stuff in the works as well that you could be tackling?
Could be is an interesting question. I designed a really cool new belt buckle that I haven't built. I have it catted up halfway. And that joins the list of maybe, I don't know, 20 interesting, cool buckles I've designed that have not seen the light of day for one reason or another.
We're similarly sort of like halfway through anodizing.
Right.
Like we keep like doing it, like picking away at it, like getting it good enough to get through a project and then being like, oh, time to get back to work. And right now we have a big push to really systematize and increase our inspection capability in the shop and document, process, all that. So that's kind of like primary focus for the next month at least.
Okay.
But I think post that we need to like definitively loop back to anodizing and make sure that it's something we can reliably use when we need it.
That makes sense. And like, I don't know, the theme of my year is throwing stuff in the garbage. And I think making that a viable thing that is not frowned upon in an organization might also be useful. Not to say you should with anodizing, but it's sort of like, I think sometimes I hang on to projects being like, oh, one day we should whatever, instead of being like, all right, we got it to that point. At that point, we learned X, Y, and Z. The next push would be too expensive or in time or money.
Yeah.
And we're not doing it.
Right.
It's out of here.
Yeah.
Maybe we will. And if we have to, we'll start again. I don't know.
Right. Totally.
Anyway.
Should we jump into some stuffs?
Yeah.
So I kind of mentioned this on the last episode, but I made an SOP text document template, which is in the format of a series of questions.
I'd love to read it if
I can read it to you right now.
Oh, amazing.
It's not complicated. I did a little bit of reading prior to I just looked up some SOP templates.
Okay.
And yeah, SOPs are fundamentally fairly generic, because they
God willing
cover cover a wide range of things. Sorry, give me 1 second here. Okay, so it's pretty simple. We have created / updated on, and then date format, but just X's. By, and then it just says name, so you fill in your name, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
When and why this needs to be done. That's the first thing. And then there's an example.
Oh, cool.
When changing a saw blade, what triggers cause I need to edit the text. What triggers cause one to choose to change the blade, and how to choose which one to replace it with. Next is the end goal, so general notes, and then quantifiable aspects. Time to complete task, if applicable, in minutes, hours, days, so that if someone were about to embark on this, they need to know, like, is this something I can do in the next half hour between tasks, or is this something I need to set aside half a day for, etc. Additional notes or context. And then there's a section that's required equipment / resources before beginning. And then, are there attached photos for the equipment and resources? Yes or no? If yes, please name attachments to match the resource number. And then there's just a list of like resource 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that you can add to, or like description. And then steps. And then the same thing, attached reference photos for the steps, yes or no? If yes, please name them accordingly. And then steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And you can fill in and delete whatever you don't want to use. So pretty simple.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And the underlying cause for this or motivation was just to minimize the amount of missed information. As simple things like a classic missed bit of information would be a created or updated on date. That is something I personally routinely forget to write down. And when going back through like old setup sheets, I'll be like, well, is this the time when we did it this way, or was it the next time?
Yep.
And then who did it? And if I like think about like going online and looking for a recipe for cooking, they always follow a standard format, and we totally take it for granted that they are a standard format.
And that is an SOP for making food.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Basically.
That's a great point.
So it's like, yeah, if you're baking, it's like dry ingredients, wet ingredients, oven temp, cook time.
Right.
You know, like every single one has that same format. And so obviously the contents are totally unique for every recipe, but they all have that standard format. And so that's what we're trying to create for our SOPs.
It reminds me of, I think it is in Designing the Future, talking about A3 as one, like it's not just a problem solving tool, but it is also gains efficiency because people know how to communicate projects to each other. Like if you walk up to someone's A3, you sort of know where to look for what.
Oh,
and so you just save a lot of time in standardized formats in that way.
I like it.
This is what I'm repeating from a book. I don't know because we don't have a standard. But you know, room for improvement.
Always.
So we made a duplicate. We have a duplicate button in Arda, and one of the beauties of these on-site installs is we use the product aggressively for like 5 days. And so it's like any friction, we come up with a lot of improvements doing it, which is awesome. One of which was
you're eating all your own dog food.
I didn't catch this, but Kyle made an Arda. So we have a lot of supplies we like to stock. So now we have an Arda, which we're also experimenting with like project management with, because they're each tasks. We have standardized, like on site, we have a series of tasks like booking a hotel, booking flights. So now, anyway, the icon for that is a dog food, is a bowl of dog food, which I did not catch, but I did appreciate.
That's really funny. We have a text thread for our shop, and we eat an aggressive amount of peanut butter on rice cakes in our shop.
Okay.
I don't know who it was. Someone made the like icon for the text thread, a rice cake with peanut butter on top.
Excellent. Are you gonna make t-shirts?
Probably should. That would be fun.
Speaking of which, I fired up a vinyl cutter.
Oh, nice.
It's really easy to make t-shirts and so cheap.
Huh.
Like they're the vinyl iron-on ones, which are not as good as screen print, but
still pretty good.
They're totally good.
Nice.
I guess that would be an improvement. I don't know if it quite counts as an improvement. We didn't have enough Arda t-shirts for these on-sites and stuff. And so, I don't know. Last week just turned into an absolute, 2 weeks ago, I guess. It was just one thing to another. And so I decided I would just make them because the cost and the timeline, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I had the vinyl cutter, so I got it all together. I cut them, and then I ran out of time on Friday, so I brought the decals and the shirts with me. I didn't have an iron. So I went to a Goodwill while I was in California.
Oh, Lordy.
Found an iron at like 2 a.m. in the seediest motel ever. I made some shirts, and anyway.
The glory of startup life.
Got the job done. Yeah. We made shirts that said inventory software that doesn't suck. I don't know if it was too aggressive. Maybe. Hard to say. Anyway, so yes, that's a long way of saying that the duplicate button, I kept hitting it. But then there's all these fields, most of which delete, but then some of them don't. Like you don't want the department to do, like if it deleted everything, why hit the duplicate button?
Sure.
And then if you duplicate everything, then you have to be very careful to go through and remove the really specific things.
It's like such a huge vector of error.
Yes. And so what I finally decided as a good way of deciding which cells can be left in is the failure mode. So we removed the URL was sort of the last thing we took out of the duplicate, because the failure mode is I order the wrong thing and I thought it was ordered and now it arrives and it's wrong. That sucks.
Yeah.
If I have to, so that seemed like a bad failure mode to leave in, but that was the improvement, is making the duplicate button not duplicate the URL.
Nice.
And sometimes you do want it, right? Like if you have a generic wholesale login, then even there, it's not a good use case. But there are people who like put in eBay because they go buy stuff from eBay. And so that's what they stick in as the link. So theoretically, there are situations where you'd be like, oh, I wish it just duplicated that. But
you can always go back. Yeah,
you can always add it back in. Yeah. And like I was just like, if I do it for someone and then they go and order the wrong thing on the card we made on site, that's a bad look.
Yeah.
But it's also worse than not having ordered it, because you have to do a return and you thought you got it.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway,
I do that sometimes with setup sheets between very similar parts. But the first thing I always go through after copying and pasting is I like read through the whole sheet and just like X out anything that needs to be updated versus doing it later when I'm in a rush.
Yes.
Because I've found that to be and still make mistakes, but that is like a guaranteed vector for error, basically. Yeah. So Will did a cool one here. We've talked about it a bit. The challenge of estimating load on the shop and how that affects lead time when quoting, and what kind of, what decisions we're going to make in scheduling.
Yeah.
Like we're working on a pull system theoretically, but we still have to decide which lanes we're going to put jobs in. And when we quote stuff, we still have to decide what sort of lead time we're willing to promise. And in order to do that, we need to have some sort of rough idea of how long a job will take. And it can be it can be
right.
quite coarse.
And still be helpful.
And still be helpful. But it has to be something that's more than nothing. So Will got into Zapier, which we use to integrate paperless parts, which we use for quoting, to Airtable, which we use for job management. And he was able to pass through the runtime estimates that get used in the quote through to paperless.
That's awesome.
And then
through to Airtable.
Through to Airtable. Yeah. And then we're using that with a simple formula to round to a very coarse number. So there's never anything less than a half a day.
Fascinating.
And we're going to organize our job board in half-day increments.
That's cool.
And then it increments in half-day increments. So it would be like a half day, a day, a day and a half or
Fascinating.
two. Because knowing,
that's very cool.
Yeah, having a level of granularity less than that does not give us much information. It just requires getting a calculator out effectively.
Right. Interesting. That's awesome.
And it's not going to be a bulletproof solution, and there's still going to be quite a bit of management involved, in that we're going to have to, when we're moving things along, be cognizant of how many slots that job takes up and move things along accordingly. And, there will be empty spaces that we have to accommodate.
So I just did a thing which I didn't list here. I made I'll get to it later. You could laser cut, like send or 3D print bars of half day, full day. Oh. And then just clip, like if those were magnetic with a clip, then the carrier could be the width of the time. A 7-day bar might be a little unwieldy.
Yeah, it might be a bit.
Just a thought. I don't know.
Well, we still haven't actually done the divisions on our scheduling board.
Yeah.
So this is not. It is passed through now, so it prints onto our work order slips, but we're not actually using it.
Okay.
But the thought is that right now someone has to go through and do mental estimates, add up time on a calculator, and then stick that somewhere. So the thought at the moment is having it right there and easily moving stuff along and just leaving a gap is pretty straightforward and mindless.
Relative to current.
And we're going to, before we try and make any other big improvements on the system, we're going to see how that works.
That is awesome. Yeah. Well, I guess I'll go slightly out of order. We were having an issue on on-site installs where it was hard to figure out how to attach the Kanban in a way that made it very clear when the trigger was. And it's a little less forgiving when you're working with a workforce that isn't really well trained and on Kanban specifically.
Yeah, understand the principles.
Yeah, of this thing is really important, though it is a little slip of paper, right? And just there's so many things that we've done in our shop that are really half-assed in terms of our Kanban implementation, like a bin with it resting on top of the bin. And it's we all know what that means. We're going to do the right thing, right? But it's sloppy, and it's because we all know. And so they don't know. Anyway, I made a, so this was kind of fun. We were actually at Gimbal Automation. Thanks for having us. They have a water jet. And so I was just hey, Michael, this might be a long shot, but any chance we could fire one of these off? So we made a few of this bracket. It's super simple. It's hand bendable. And then it serves a few functions. You can put it, it almost looks like a bookend. Okay. It's just an L bracket with a few different positions you can clip the card to. So you can put it if you're doing Windex, which would be Paul Akers' favorite example. No, he likes Windex. Then you could put one bottle on the short side of the L, and then the L extends up in front of the bottle. So, and then you clip the card to it, and you can either clip the card up from it for taller items or down for shorter items. So that would be if you're unloading front to back on a shelf. You can also do it between boxes, between bins. It just is a very clear indicator. Then you can also flip it so you can tuck the long side of the L into a stack of boxes if you're picking top to bottom. And clip the card there on the front. And it's funny, I ordered a bunch from Send just to see if it was a good idea after prototyping it, and we used it in a few implementations that week, and it was great. So I ordered some more for our shop, And I did our webbing rack, which we had previously just like tucked the cards in between rolls of webbing. Totally works. And I was kind of like, is this really worth like $3.50 per bracket?
Sure.
And then I just did it for science, and it's so clear now. Like you walk by and just at a glance, you know where you are relative to your minimum.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know. This is like, I keep learning the same lesson, I feel like, which is like the difference between just making things really obvious. Kyle said to me recently, which stuck in my head, ambiguity is so expensive.
Yeah.
And now it's not ambiguous. So
the difference between ambiguity and clarity is unambiguous.
Yeah, but it's funny. I feel like I get used to a state of ambiguity that is high.
Yeah.
In the shop, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's, you do this there, right? And it's been really cool. Sam's been labeling everything lately. Yeah. And I see these labels, and I'm like, how didn't we do that sooner? It's just, yeah. Anyway, so bracket.
Nice. As mentioned many a time now, we have a whole inspection suite of equipment coming in, and we didn't have a place for it. So we kind of got together as a team the other day to discuss how we wanted to change the flow in the shop.
Okay.
And so now we moved a bunch of the shipping stuff because that was sort of like spread out in a whole region and was not very well optimized. It didn't have good flow. And then we moved the programming station near the inspection station, and that we're effectively going to have a programming and inspection cell.
That's awesome. Shiji Shingo would approve.
Hopefully.
There's a book, Zero Quality Control, and basically the theme of the book is shortening the feedback loop from the time a reject gets made to the time when the person who sort of created the
reject.
Not necessarily the reject, like the operator maybe created the reject, but
sure,
the programmer actually created the reject.
Yeah.
So just shortening up that loop.
I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be good.
Super cool.
It's still creating, I haven't figured out an effective way so far to create a hard stop that like requires us to be the final inspection. Like at this point, it's still kind of easy for whoever's doing the setup and proof out to just kind of do it.
Yeah.
But I think potentially the hard stop, this just occurred to me, might be that if we require CMM inspection for everything, I'm not sure if we want to do that. That's kind of a tall order.
Yeah.
But if we require CMM inspection for everything, that sort of like, I hate to use the word, but sort of gatekeeps that, and like creating a delineation where like this has to get handed off. You can't just do that yourself. You have to hand it back to the person who does the CMM programming.
Gotcha.
Not that I want to
right now
keep that.
Stuff can get inspected by anyone because everyone knows generally how to inspect most parts.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I think there's a fair amount of like, oh, that person's busy, I'll just do this, get it done, keep things rolling. And on the one hand, that's great, but on the other hand, it doesn't close the loop.
Yeah. I have a random thought that does not belong in this episode, but I'm just going to share it. You were mentioning like your shop and pull. It occurred to me, like if you imagine like a microscope that you're zooming in and out of a sample, there is some level of abstraction where you are pure pull and can manage whip effectively between stations.
I'm not sure I follow.
Like programming to your like routing your programming to each machine, and its routing is really difficult to pull. But routing, hey, has programming overproduced, or are they just enough? Like that's easy, right? Not easy, but like
relatively speaking.
Then you have a programming board which feeds your machining department.
Yeah.
And then your machining department, quote unquote, feeds your inspection, and treating each of those with a buffer and avoiding overproduction in either one, and making sure that people go help the area that is under. I don't know. Seems like that is an easy way to wrap one's head around implementing pull. Yeah. It's just getting to that gross level where it is strict pull. And then there's a lot of refinements to figure out the rest.
Yeah, I think right now we don't have a buffer between machining and inspection, because often we're inspecting the first article, and the longer that sits in the buffer, the longer a machine is idled. But simultaneously, as I think through it, typically, like if there's multiple proof outs happening at one time, they're each kind of getting pushed forward like a peanut. a little bit at a time, and they like, or not peanut, whatever. You have multiple things that you're kind of like pushing along.
Okay.
In like little bits.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we were to change the flow to having a buffer, it could allow whoever's doing proof outs and setups to sort of like block their time a little more effectively. Because they'll be like, I'm just going to get this one done, hand it off to inspection. Then I will fully shift gears to this other process.
Get that one done. And by that time, inspection will be complete and ready to continue on this. And I think that might actually be really helpful, even though when looking at it from the outside, there will be machines idled for longer blocks. But I think the total amount of idle time will probably be lower. In a strange twist.
In
a strange
twist.
Repeated twist. Okay, this is an awesome one. Kyle figured out how to get we have color coding on the cards.
Yep.
Learning that color coding is virtually impossible unless you were the one who set it up and somehow it sticks for you.
Yeah, just today I was like, why do we have all these colors on these cards?
Yeah, right. You're like, I don't know what they mean.
Yeah.
And then it becomes meaningless, or actually worse than meaningless. It's noise.
It's confusion, yeah.
So it now surfaces the parameter that is driving the color coding on it, which mostly is department.
On the card itself.
Yeah, so on the color bar, it will say like tool crib, or
Yeah.
it will say packing materials, or like shipping, or whatever is driving the color coding.
Nice.
Yeah. It's like, oh, because now it's like way more teachable. Like every time you pick it up, you can reference what it means.
You associate. It's like dog training.
Yeah, and then at some point, glancing around,
You just know.
the colors mean something.
Yeah. And also probably if you color code the places where they go, that would be a very simple way to do it as well.
Okay, so this isn't... I could stick this in next episode. We were debating what the pros and cons are. It seems like either the color coding should help you with routing the card, meaning when it needs a resupply, who provides it, right? In organizations that are running both internal production and external procurement, routing to the external procurement team is one color, routing to your water jet is another color, routing to your machining department is another color. That's one, is like, where does the card go? And I know by the color where I should drop it off. The other is, where does the item go that the card comes back with?
Yeah.
And that one is nice because at a glance on your shelf, you would see if something's out of place.
Yeah.
The issue becomes that color isn't very enabling. Well, it's only enabling right? Like if you're doing receiving, it is enabling because you're like, oh, I just picked up a card, I have the item, and I know I go to the shipping department.
Yeah.
So it is enabling there. When it's sitting on the shelf, it's not enabling because they're all blue, right? And you're like, okay.
Sure. I mean,
That said, it is visual control. You know, everything belongs there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have conviction yet.
I mean, I think probably both are important. It's just probably depends on the organization.
Yeah. I think that's right. But I think I need to know how to advise people.
Yeah.
And
in an organization like ours where we're using it strictly for outside,
making them all one color would be a little weird.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, there the only benefit is to like tell you where to put the thing.
Okay. That makes sense.
We got Halon fire extinguishers for our shop.
So those are ones that don't damage electronics?
That is true, yes.
Okay.
And I think they just don't damage things in general. And also, as I understand it, they are just a more effective fire extinguisher.
Oh, are they more
Perhaps.
expensive?
Quite a lot more expensive.
Gotcha. Damn, I just bought fire extinguishers. Maybe I should replace them.
I also bought a bunch of normal ones.
Okay.
So I got like 4 standard, whatever.
How bad will it feel if someone uses a standard one on something they should have used?
Right. Well, we had to have the talk, and I was like, first things first, grab a fire extinguisher. Right? Like that's the important thing. We did put the halon extinguishers next to the machines, so they're the most convenient for use in the situations where...
Was this inspired by something or just popped into your head?
We had talked about it for a while, and then someone visited the shop, or was there for a while, their family visiting someone who works there, and they were just spending the day at the shop, and they've had several fires in their life. And they were like, you should probably have more than the one. Because the people who manage the building, they keep it up to code.
Yeah.
So there's one fire extinguisher, which effectively,
By
I
the
guess,
exit or something.
it wasn't by the exit, oddly, but and then there is a fire suppression system. But if that goes off, things are bad.
Things are bad, and those are intended for evacuation, not for putting out the fire.
Evacuation?
Getting people out of the building. That's what those are there for.
Huh.
Yeah.
Didn't realize that.
Yeah, so like in a fire, if you have a sprinkler system, you have higher allowances to the nearest exit. Because it's about like, can you get out of the building?
Huh.
Not, is the fire out now?
Right, yeah. Well, it has to be quite hot in there for those to go off.
Yeah, they're pretty interesting. Yeah, I don't mess around with fire and safety stuff generally.
You mean you take it seriously?
Very seriously.
Yeah.
Like egress, all that stuff. You're kind of like...
For sure.
That will suck if that happens, and I don't want that.
The halon extinguishers, we got like refurbished, and they were $250 each. New, I guess, is $500 each.
Okay.
Versus like a $80.
Yeah, that's what I bought them at Costco for like $55 or something.
Okay, yeah, and I think they're good for 5 years before you have to have them like rebuilt.
Cool.
They have to be inspected every year.
Gotcha.
But yeah, minor but major improvement.
So here's a major one. I hesitate to mention it because it's not shipped. It's shipped to one customer, I think. We have our first feature that is fully ours, end-to-end ARDA code.
Hot dog.
Yeah, it's a long time coming. So it's hosted on Amazon Web Services. It is a print feature where you hit print and the thing comes out as a PDF that is sized, get this, for the piece of paper you're trying to print on.
Amazing.
So turns out it is a huge headache for the following reason. You have variable inputs. So like you could make a title like 1/4-inch end mill, or you could make a title like dark chocolate, 78% organic, non-GMO.
The one that Jimmy likes, not the other one that
Jan and people have the full range. And so then when you're mapping it to and before you write in, yes, there's the solutions to this, but in the way we currently built it, it is difficult, and we plan on fixing it eventually. But essentially, we had to build tiered systems where there's some logic about how long your words are in character count, which is not a good way of doing it because a W is a different width than an I. And then essentially try to size it so it doesn't cut you off. Yeah. There are we don't have anywhere the parameter in the services we're using, and I should say we are using a PDF renderer service. Okay. And we don't have the parameters of the actual, like, I forget if it's like picos or points or whatever width of the characters you put in. So there was a major hurdle to make it fairly robust so that like kind of whatever you put in, it will show up. The smallest text tier is not exactly an FU, make your title shorter, but it gets close. I feel like people will be like, oh, I see. I should shorten my title. And we tested it with a lot of sample data to kind of see what it is. But anyway, it's fast. It has a lot of exceptions handling. And we're excited to roll it out.
Nice. That's very exciting. My people will be excited.
Yes. It was inspiring. I stopped by your shop, as you know, but our listeners maybe don't, and had some great conversations with our very nice users who are patient.
Yeah. Question. Have you revisited printing on non-paper?
Yes.
Yeah. What's the current thinking?
Yes. So we have 2 leads on, and if anyone has ideas about a card stock essentially that we can print directly on so we don't have to laminate. Yeah. That's kind of the goal.
Because that's it's a time
It's
suck.
So annoying. Yeah. The short answer is there are solutions that are $1,200 to $3,500 printers that will do it.
Sure.
Which isn't quite out of the question, but
at this point I would probably do that.
Yeah. So getting Would color be important? Your last comment notwithstanding.
In our shop, probably not.
Okay. And so you would rather just have something that comes out, it's robust, it's black and white.
Yeah.
Call it a day.
And I think we would start using that in so many places.
Okay. Interesting. So there are solutions there. Basically event badge printing is a thing, and they're like pop, so non-tearable.
Mm-hmm.
They're not quite as card-like as I would like.
Sure.
They're a little bit flimsy.
Is that the same material that they use to print like bus tickets and stuff?
I forget if that's pop or PVC.
Okay.
But the one we did find that is more promising for us and for more customers, because I think most customers would probably want to stay under $500 for the printer, is using a laser jet printer to print on a synthetic cardstock.
Okay.
We have 2 companies that are sampling us currently, and the minimums on those are like, I forget if it's like in the thousands of cards, which we could totally just buy and distribute.
Oh, gotcha.
Like we'd have to custom size them. We'd have to get them custom cut and all that stuff.
Okay.
There isn't like an off the shelf. Again, write in, please, if anyone knows anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems like we'll have to get something custom cut, but the minimums are not crazy.
Because we come across this all the time. Like we also print and laminate our Kamishibai cards, and not irregularly I'm like, oh, I should do that. I'm like, oh, I don't have, whatever. I'm not going to take 5 minutes to print and laminate this right now and whatever.
Gotcha.
And I feel like if there was like a printer that we had that we could print from any computer in the shop,
and it was just durable and waterproof, and
it'd be amazing. It'd be worth a lot. We'd use it. I think if we could also make that our work order slip printing, that'd be pretty beneficial, though not completely necessary. Anyway, I'm curious.
Yeah. Let's compare notes.
Yeah. Nice. Another one for us here. We got a Vapor Hone Media Blaster. Thanks, Dylan at Protium/With Intolerance for the recommendation. We're getting more and more calls for bead blasting, and I had thought about getting just kind of like the cheapo standard blast cabinet, but it's kind of a whole bunch of things. You need a special dust collection system, et cetera, just kind of balloons.
Oh, this is the one from McMaster
that would be a standard one. Yeah, the Vapor Hone uses a liquid. It's cleaner, less fussing about. It seems like it does a nicer finish. I don't know. We'll see about that. Anyway, the motivation was we were either having our anodizers do it, but we had no control over like the quality, like the degree of media blast, and some of the parts we got, we were like, wow, you guys really went at this.
Yeah, we got some samples back that were pretty hardcore.
Yeah, or going to user friends.
Gotcha.
Which was the whole thing. So it seemed like it was time to get that brought in.
Super cool. I've been really appreciating Laser Bros. They're open sourcing all this equipment, like tumblers. They just have a design. I assume you can say like, hey, can you ship me all the parts for it?
Yeah.
So they get money from it. Maybe someone should do a sandblasting cabinet or a vapor hone. I designed my own sandblasting cabinet a while ago, and I keep wanting to redesign the one we own because it is so lazy. It does the job, but barely, and the sand goes everywhere, and fixable problems, and very frustrating.
Totally.
We have a new card layout, so we reworked the card printing, give us a lot more control. Beforehand, we had to really drive a lot of things by like allowing for long text to not mess up the whole card layout, and so we had a lot of white space. We've reduced the white space pretty dramatically, which means bigger text.
Nice.
We moved to icons instead of saying like minimum quantity, minimum order, and it has the text a little bit under it, like you can. So it describes it, but that narrowed up those fields really dramatically. I don't know if it's a good move. Like once you have a standard layout, it seems easy.
Sure.
I don't know. Any thoughts on?
It's making me twitch a little bit, but I'll have to look at it and see.
It made me twitch as well. So maybe it's a bad idea.
I really like words.
Yeah, but if you could get over the hump to diagrams, it's going to be so fast, and they're small.
It's true. It's interesting. My daughter's 5, and she independently has picked up on the fact that like the power button symbol is universal across all equipment.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, wow. Yeah, that's true. I hadn't really fully thought through it.
Right.
So there is a lot of power there, but also it needs to be like very clear and unambiguous.
Well, I will say the failure mode, am I right about that? I was going to say the failure mode in our system is not, I'll have to think about that. I was going to say it's not bad, but I'm realizing a few examples where it would be bad. So anyway, the card layout is really nice. The text is way bigger, which has been a pain point for a lot of people, including me. And yeah.
Cool. We started color coding our inspection equipment for whether it is for inspection station only or if it can be used at machines.
What are you doing it with?
Just little green stickers.
Okay. Nice.
For the moment. Basically, underlying motivation is we are trying to set the stage for ISO AS certification sometime this year.
Wow.
Trying to get as many of the pieces in place prior so that it's not as much of a lift when it's time to do it. And in talking with some friends, a big ongoing cost is maintaining calibration certification for your tools. And so there's a strong incentive to have as few tools as possible that need to be calibrated. And
so just by designating like for reference only instead of for inspection.
Yeah. So we're going to have a lot of for reference only tools, and then a handful of inspection station only tools that are calibrated. And that's also a big push for going the CMM route, is having that be one of our primary tools that things flow through. And certifying and calibrating that is expensive, but if you can sort of streamline the workflow for that being kind of a single point of, not a single point of contact, but like a single point that everything goes through, I think that will help us with that process quite a bit.
I would guess most of our listeners are aware of this, but for anyone who isn't, like the traceability of like standards and dimensions is so cool. Like
it
back
is
to
cool.
Universal standards is pretty wild.
And also reading up on like ISO certification a little bit, like it's not strictly to do with manufacturing of, machining or whatever. I remember recently picking up like an olive oil can and being like, oh, ISO 9001 for the olive oil, not for the can.
Right.
And I was like, oh, this is cool that this is like sort of an underlying, it's something that's important across all aspects of life, and has value as much as it is a pain in the butt.
Right.
So I'm excited for that to
very cool.
Hopefully open some doors, but mostly just be an impetus to continue to refine.
Yeah. I sort of covered this. We made a new Coda pack, and by we I mean Miguel, that has better exception handling and reporting.
What's a pack?
It is the phone a friend here. No, basically, if you want, we use Coda. Arda is built on Coda.
Sure.
And for it to call an API, you install a pack, which I believe is sort of the translator for Coda to go reference the correct API in the right way.
Okay.
And like go to the right place, is my understanding. And so it lives in Coda. And when you're calling that pack is then going to the correct service. So like there's a pack for Slack, Slack pack, that calls Slack in the right
pack.
So anyway, we built the pack to go to our printing service.
Gotcha.
And then we found some edge cases and stuff that we wanted to account for. So he rebuilt it.
Nice.
And that's an improvement.
Cool. Well, that wraps us up for today. Thanks everyone for listening along, and hopefully you're having great success in all of your improvements and your lean journey that you are following along with. You can find me at lichen_MFG on Instagram, likenprecision.com on the World Wide Web. the pod at Incremental CI on Instagram, and we have a Patreon.
Check it out. And you can find me at austere_manufacturing on Instagram and austeremfg.com on the internet, and arda.cards on Instagram and on the internet. And we will be back next week.
Talk to you soon.